This is another historic Christian population that's going to get driven out if we don't take some policy moves. And thankfully, we have some that are available to us. But how many more of these do we have to see? And you can see that that's the play that's taking place in Nagorno-Karabakh, that Azerbaijan's going to squeeze the place, just force the people to leave. You can leave, but you can't return. They'll go to Europe. They'll go to another part of Armenia. They'll come to the United States or Canada. They'll make a nice living. There are a number of diaspora of Armenia around the world now that have done very well, some of them in this room. It's wonderful people. But do we want to see yet another ancient Christian population be driven out of its homeland? Yet another one. And a lot of this is with U.S. weaponry that the Azeris have, or Israeli weaponry that the Azeris have. And I just say, no, we should not have that taking place on our watch and at this time. And it doesn't need to happen. We tried to get into Nagorno-Karabakh. We couldn't get in. They wouldn't let us in to the place. But I would think they would let a congressional delegation. I'd hope they would. And if they wouldn't, that would also tell you something that's taking place. As I left that Yerevan, and you've been there, and you see Mount Ararat just staring over the city, which is such a majestic view from the city and from the airport, it reminds you of the historical significance of Armenia, first Christian nation on earth, before any other nation was, still is. It's been persecuted by multiple empires over thousands of years, the Persians, the Ottoman, Russians, others, and yet they're still there. They are still there. They're still fighting. And they just inspire you with their tenacity, with their courage, their pluck. Armenia, to me, and I put in my testimony, is really kind of the Israel of Christendom, where it stood there so long, and we should stand with them, and we should not allow them to be driven out of this ancient homeland with the use particularly of U.S. weaponry doing this. And we should stand up policy-wise here, and we should stand up compassionately. We should have, I would hope, Christian activists and others from across this country and world standing up and sending aid and support to the Armenian people like they did during the genocide that took place in 1915.
Azerbaijan is one of the most corrupt countries on earth. That corruption is clear because despite its tremendous hydrocarbons, its actual per capita income is less than that of Georgia and Armenia, which do not have that energy resource, which basically means that ordinary Azerbaijanis live far more poorly than ordinary Armenians and Georgians do, simply given how so many billions of dollars have flown into the Aliyev accounts, have gone into the Azerbaijani laundromat and caviar diplomacy, and otherwise been siphoned away. This situation is real. It's grave and growing. President Aliyev has become more erratic, but fortunately, we still have many policy arrows in our quiver which we could utilize. Timing matters. The State Department should be applauded for its diplomacy, but not all diplomacy is the same. It needs to be done right. It needs to be done with a greater strategic overview, and we need to understand the forest through the trees and not simply count ourselves as victorious or wise in our diplomacy if tree counting supplants the forest, which, as the ambassador said, is the preservation of one of the oldest Christian communities in the oldest Christian country.
We may think poorly of the Bolsheviks, and particularly of Joseph Stalin, and of many of their policies. But it was not for no reason that the Commissariat for Nationalities made Nagorno-Karabakh an autonomous region within Soviet Azerbaijan. Stalin, of course, was from the Caucasus, and there were many of his colleagues who knew the area well, and they realized that this was a different kind of place, and that it needed to have an autonomy, which is, of course, what it received in 1924. Now, there are lots of arguments about whether that was the right thing to do, but my point is simply that it was clear something had to be done because this place was special.
You stop these weapon flows from coming from us and the Israelis, We need to push on the Israelis not to have the weapons flows going to Azerbaijan. You could actually stop this thing from further developing. I really think both Erdogan and Aliyev are just continuing to push this, thinking we're distracted. Russia's the big deal here. We're not going to do anything because we like Azerbaijan helping us with Iran, so that gives them a free pass card. They can just go ahead and do these things. And I think they're just going to keep doing it until we really actually do something here. They have been so tied in with Russia for so long and so dependent upon Russia to help them. And now the Russians have traded them off, gave them away. They're not guarding the Lachen corridor. They're not keeping it open like they're supposed to, that they could. And so they just feel like they've been traded off by the Russians. But they know the Americans could help them, but they're not there yet. One guy gave us a great example of saying it's like the Armenians clinging to this little life raft. They've been left adrift in the middle of the ocean. They're clinging to this little life raft. And if they swim 100 meters over here, there's a big ocean liner they can get to. But they got to let go of the little Russian life raft to swim over here and to get in with the U.S. and a part of a Western support system. We got to help them. We got to encourage them. We got to tell them we will be there. We are there for you. We'll help you with weapons system to defend yourself.
Is what we saw in 1973 in Egypt. While some people are willing to say, Armenia has traditionally had a relationship with Russia, therefore we need to embrace Azerbaijan. Back in 1973, rather than dismissing Anwar Sadat as a Soviet proxy, more agile diplomacy, which started during the Nixon and Ford administration and continued in the Carter administration, decided that Egypt could be flipped. And that's what enabled the Camp David Accords and the first major peace treaty allowing for Arab-Israeli peace. We need to take some lessons from the past.
What we see today is a second Armenian genocide, which is underway. And the United States is simply not doing what it can do to stop this pattern, despite ample evidence of credible human rights organizations. Azerbaijani forces attacked Artsakh on September 27th, 2020. They use armed drones, heavy artillery, rockets, and special forces. They were backed by Turkish military and mercenaries, including up to 2,000 Islamist jihadis from Syria and Libya, who were promised a bounty for killing Armenians. Trophy videos of these jihadists show them boasting over Armenian bodies they had mutilated.